Good morning. It is Friday, October 21st, and it's time for another morning drive. Last night on the 20th, October 20th, we had, I believe, 12 games, 13 games. I can't remember the count off the top of my head at the moment, but it was a busy night around the league, so there's that. I only ended up watching, other than, a couple of minutes here and there, highlights and stuff, I ended up watching two games last night. One between the Boston Bruins and the New Jersey Devils. And the other one was between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Calgary Flames. Both of which were very good games. Truck driver next to me was signaling me, telling me he was coming over a lane. That was weird. Okay. Anyway, back to the games. So there were quite a few games last night, and we'll start with that Boston Bruins game against the Devils. That was the home opener for Boston. And actually, the game started while we were recording our weekly podcast, the Hockey Nuts podcast. And I made a note of it in the podcast that the opening ceremony, after introducing the team, they brought out Bobby Orr and Milt Schmidt, two of the biggest legends in the team's history. Milt Schmidt was a key player. In fact, I believe he was, this goes way back before my time, I believe he was the best player on the Bruins team the years they won their first two cups back in the 30s and 40s. And amazingly, he is still alive today. Although he was in a wheelchair and he looked pretty frail. But he's well into his 90s at this point. But it was great to see him out there last night. And then Bobby Orr pushed his wheelchair. And they both came out, and Milt Schmidt actually dropped the puck, the ceremonial first puck on the season, or on the home season anyway, for the Boston Bruins. So that was a great moment. And then as they were leaving the ice, to have all the players that were on the ice getting ready to start playing come up and shake Milt Schmidt's hand. It reminded me a lot of the time when the Red Sox did something similar with Ted Williams, or actually Major League Baseball did, the year that the All-Star game was in Boston. They brought out Ted Williams shortly before he died, and he had a big crowd of players surrounding him after their ceremonies were over. So that was a great moment anyway for Boston Bruins fans anyway. But in the game, the final score ended up being 2-1. It was no score after two periods. So it was very much a defensive struggle, and that's typical of New Jersey. Even with the addition of Taylor Hall, New Jersey still plays a very low-scoring, very defensive style of game. And like I said, at the end of two, it was 0-0. And then shortly into the third period, New Jersey came out and scored to make it 1-0. Boston didn't tie the game until about midway through the third. It was about when they tied the game. And it remained tied right down to the wire, and with a little over a minute left, Brad Marchand scored to take the lead 2-1. And that was that was that. It was a nice 2 points for Boston on that game. The other game I watched was Carolina and Edmonton. No, I'm sorry, not Edmonton. That was a couple nights ago. Carolina and Calgary. And Carolina was continuing their West Coast road trip as part of their big 6-game road trip to open the season, due to the fact that the Carolina State Fair was using the facilities that Carolina Hurricanes play in. More the parking lots than the building itself. But anyway, Carolina came into Calgary. I guess they had a pretty tough practice the day before because they played in Edmonton a couple nights prior, so they've been in that area, so they didn't have to travel much, and they ended up in Calgary, had a hard practice on Wednesday, and came out last night and played the Flames, and after one, Carolina had a 2-0 lead, so it was bringing it back to the first couple games that they had played where they jumped out to a big lead. And the question was, could they hold on to it? And then at the end of 2, it was 3-1 Carolina. And it became nail-biting time because partway through the third, Calgary, Johnny Gaudreau came in and scored a goal to make it 3-2. And then Calgary at that point was throwing everything they had at Carolina, trying to get that tying game. And I sensed that tying goal was coming. It just seems to be the way the Hurricanes have been playing lately, that they just, for whatever reason, can't seem to hang on to a lead, and they go into this defensive shell, prevent defense, whatever you want to call it. I know Twitter was blowing up about it because I follow a fair number of Carolina Hurricanes reporters, and they were upset that the team was doing the same thing that got them in trouble the first 2 games. But this time it was a little bit different. They managed to, not only did they manage to hold off Calgary, but they earned a power play late in the third. It was a high stick on Justin Falk, or against Justin Falk. I can't remember who actually high sticked him. And then Carolina ended up scoring on the power play. And not an empty netter, it was a regulation goal with the goalie in net. And that sealed the win for Carolina. So Carolina got its first regulation win of the year. That brings them to 1-1-2 on the year. Puts them right squarely in the middle of the pack in the East. And good win for them. Good way to get it. It took 8 games last year to get that first win. So to have them get that over with right off the bat, get that monkey off their back, was a good thing. So they have 2 more games on the road. They have 2 more games on the road, and then they come home for their home opener on the 28th. So on to the other games. Most of these games I did not see any highlights, but I'll get you the scores and anything notable from those games. The next game, the Ducks came into Philadelphia and beat the Flyers 3-2, and that was the Ducks' first regulation win of the year. So the Ducks are now 1-3-1. Flyers are 1-2-1 on the year. I gotta get over here. I'll get close to my exit. Excuse me while I change lanes in amongst traffic here a little bit. The next game, and this was a nationally televised game on NHL Network, the Penguins hosted the Sharks in a rematch of the Stanley Cup Final from last year. Maybe I got to get ahead of this guy. There we go. All right, I'm all moved over. It's getting close to my exit, so excuse me while I drive. All right. So back to the Sharks and the Penguins. Again, rematch of the Stanley Cup Final from last year. This one was in Pittsburgh last night. It was nationally televised. I did have the game up above my head on my TV, but I was recording our podcast, and I had the Bruins game on, so I wasn't really paying attention, even though it was on my TV at home. But the Penguins ended up winning that game 3-2. And that brings the Penguins to 3-1-1 on the year. Good start for them. And the Sharks dropped to 3-2 on the year. So it appears to be both teams are off to a good start. And a personal note on the Sharks, they come to Carolina on the 15th of November. And I will probably be going to the game because I happen to be on the website that I buy my tickets on. And that game, at least at the moment, tickets are going for between $10 and $20 a seat in the upper bowl, and between $39 and $60 for lower bowl seats. I actually found some seats in the corner where the Sharks would shoot twice in that end of the rink, and the ticket prices for those, I think I saw $39 for 6th row up from the glass. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. Just shows how little the demand is for those tickets. But it's a Tuesday night game too, so it's a weeknight. West Coast team doesn't have a lot of draw here in Carolina, so I'll probably take advantage and go. I've never seen the Sharks play live, so we'll find a way to get to that game, I'm sure, and I'll be talking about it for sure. So, if I do indeed go. So, on to the Canadiens and Coyotes. Montreal hosted the Coyotes and pretty much owned the game right from the start. Montreal is on fire to start the year, which I pretty much expected. Didn't expect the Carey Price injury, but he did make his return last night, and he had a pretty good game. And they ended up winning that one going away 5-2. Montreal is now 3-0-1, and the Coyotes are now 1-2 on the year. So that was only their third game of the year. The Colorado Avalanche traveled to Tampa to play the Lightning and beat the Lightning 4-0. I'm sorry, and that moves Colorado to 3-1, and the Lightning drops to 3-1. So both teams are off to a pretty good start there, and Semyon Varlamov got the shutout for Colorado in that one. Capitals beat the Panthers 4-2, and that one was in Florida, and that moves the Washington Capitals to 3-0-1, and the Panthers dropped to 2-1-1 in that one. Jágr got his 750th goal in that game in the losing effort for Florida, but that puts him, he was already there, but that 750th goal makes him third all time, behind only Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe. So pretty damn good company, if I say so myself, for a guy like Jágr, who's been around forever. But he's piled up a lot of points over his career. Definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. The next game, the Wild hosted the Maple Leafs and won that game 3-2. That moves the Wild to 3-1 on the year, And the Maple Leafs dropped to 1-1-2. Austin Matthews got his 5th goal of the year in that game for Toronto. Eric Stahl got his 2nd goal. I'm sorry, he got 2 goals last night, so he now has 3 on the year. The LA Kings beat the Stars 4-3, and that was the LA Kings' first goal of the year. First win of the year. And with the Jonathan Quick injury, that's going to be a tough road ahead for the LA Kings without having their number 1 starter. And Jeff Zatkoff is their starter at this point, with Peter Budaj backing him up. But the Kings are now 1-3, and the Stars dropped to 2-1-1 on the year. And that was an overtime game, so the Stars did get a point out of that one. All right, and the Oilers hosted the St. Louis Blues. In the marquee moment of that one was Nail Yakupov coming back for his first game since being traded a couple weeks ago. And the Oilers ended up winning that one 3-1. That moves the Oilers to 4-1 on the year, and the Blues dropped to 3-1-1. And Nail Yakupov actually got his 2nd goal in that game. For the St. Louis Blues. But he got the only goal for St. Louis in that game. So, good moment for him. And from what I understand, he played extremely well last night. As guys that generally get traded do, play well against their former team. And then in the final game of the night, the Canucks hosted the Sabres, and the Canucks came out on top in that one 2-1. That brings Canucks to 4-0-0 on the year, which is amazing considering nobody expected them to do anything this year. But they are out to a fast start so far this year. And then the Sabres dropped to 1-2-1. In that game. And of course the Sabres are without 2 of their best players, in Evander Kane and Jack Eichel. So they are struggling, to say the least. So that was pretty much it for all the games for Friday night. Tonight is, Thursday night. Tonight is Friday night, and Friday night, I haven't seen the schedule, but Friday nights generally are pretty slow, usually 5 or less games. And I know none of my favorite teams are playing, as they all played last night, so I'm not sure who exactly is playing tonight, but we'll definitely talk about it tomorrow morning. So until then, we'll talk to you later.